We're going to have a really awesome day today. We've got a great agenda and you're going to see a lot of cool stuff. One thing I love about being in Italy is that many of you are very technical. In some of the other conferences of Liferay we go to, we have much more business people, but I know we also have business people here, but I'm going to indulge our technical friends a little bit today and talk about some of the technology stuff that Liferay has in store. But before I do that, I just want to share with you something very special about 2014. I think Marco mentioned some of this in his opening comments, but we're celebrating 10 years of being in business in 2014. So that's really amazing. I started Liferay with, some friends of ours got together. We started this company together in 2004, and back then I was 26 years old. And I think I probably was smarter and wiser back then than I am today, but somehow we've still stayed in business. So it's been an amazing journey for me, and many of you who have been journeying with me and with Liferay have experienced that as well. So that's our company. About a year ago, we have a retreat every year. This is about 500 people. We went to San Diego last December. You can see all the kids in the front row here. So if you're wondering about whether to buy Enterprise Edition, please do. They need to be fed, they need to be sent to school. In 10 years, we've grown to 550 people. And the awesome thing about Liferay is that we're actually a very international company. I have an American accent and I'm a US citizen, but I spend a lot of my time traveling throughout the world, meeting the Liferay community, and also working with our employees all around the world. And the great thing about this is that our perspective is also global. So when you look at our product, you can see that we're getting the ideas and the innovation, also some simple requirements from people in places as far away as Japan and Europe, but also South America. Some simple things that we learn when we're a global company. In Spain, people have two last names, right? You have the father's last name and the mother's last name. So when you're filling out the user profile, the American way, which is just the first, middle, and last name, doesn't make any sense. In Japan, they do it the other way. They start out with the last name first and then the first name. So it's these little things that we learn from being a global company, and I'm very proud of the fact that this is how we're represented in 2014. Here's a map of where Liferay is all around the world. You can see we have many offices here in Europe. You may know Cheung, our Director of Operations here in Europe. He and I have been in Europe for the last 4 years building our business here. So this is just another example of how seriously we take our vision to be very much in the places where we do business. Also in 2014, we're very, very happy to announce that we're again a leader in the Magic Quadrant. I know most of you guys don't actually really care about this, but it's thanks to you guys that we've been able to have this result. We're a little company called Liferay, which many of the big companies in Italy still haven't even heard about, is sitting right up there with IBM and with Microsoft. So if you're a technical person, this at least should matter to you, because it means that when you want to use Liferay in your job, you can show this to your manager and say, look, this is who we want to use. It should make your job of convincing them a lot easier. Liferay is also very, very special because we have been able to grow as a company without using an outside investor. And when I say we didn't use an outside investor, sometimes people say, oh, that means the founders must have put a lot of their own money into the company. And actually, again, I was 26, Bryan Chen was 25, Bryan Kim was 25, so we didn't have any money. So actually, the truth is, we started the company just with 5 laptops, right? And we used services to fund the business, and over time, we've been able to grow it. But this is really, really important because when we make decisions about community version and enterprise version, when we make decisions about our partnership program or how we treat our employees, we're really trying to do what's best for everyone involved, and not just the people who have the money, right? So this gives us a lot of freedom. It affects every aspect of our business. And I think this is something that you can be very proud of because it's being an open source community and an open source company that's made this possible. Okay. In the last 10 years, a lot of people have created some pretty cool websites using Liferay. This is from a company called Banyan Tree. It's a luxury resort based throughout Asia. And you can see that they've got large graphics. If you go to the site, they've got videos. It works on your mobile device. It's a really great site, right? Of course, they're a very big business that makes a lot of money, and they could probably choose whatever platform they wanted, but they chose Liferay because our features and our flexibility was exactly what they needed for their website. So that's really great, but I'm sure that Microsoft and IBM can show you all kinds of cool sites that people have built with their products as well. But what makes Liferay really special is that at the same time, there are organizations like Hair & Low in the Netherlands that built an intranet for disabled people using Liferay as well. So gentlemen like this, who might have trouble with your normal intranet interface, is able to access the internet very easily using Liferay technology. So addressing the needs of both the enterprise and nonprofit organizations, that's something that's really cool that again, maybe is unique to Liferay and open source products like ours. Finally, I could stand here all day and tell you about how great Liferay is, but I think nothing is more honest than the actual testimony of the people who work at Liferay. And I want to show you a video that summarizes how our employees feel about Liferay after 10 years.
But can it act like weird?
So they're very looking.
You're editing. What I love most about Liferay.
Liferay. I like how people are sort of really weird and really nice and really honest.
The people that I get to work with are both fun and exciting, and you're able to connect with them.
Everyone just cares so much for each other.
I know that they want the best for me, and it's so cool because we're all striving towards a common goal together.
And they're here to serve rather than be served. And that excites me about being here, that excites me about coming to work every day.
What I like about Liferay is that it can be creative. If you have an idea and you truly believe in it, you have the freedom to work on it.
Yeah, we get the opportunity to be creative with our work and to kind of discover new things.
Getting to look at what's going on in our industry and seeing all these possibilities, and then being able to look around the office at the people that I work with and think, wow, we can do that. The company is very caring about their employees and their customers, and they're not just there to make money.
I love our customers because they create the tickets that in turn cause our team to work together.
So when I make things and I satisfy our customers, it's awesome.
I like that I work for a company that exists for a noble purpose, a cause that's greater than itself.
I love the EVP program and being able to give back.
Liferay EVP is an employee volunteer program, and Liferay provides 40 hours of PTO to employees to help partner with an organization to help those in need.
So what I love most about Liferay is the vision that the company has, not just for serving their customers, but also for serving communities around the world.
The vision for Liferay as a company, equipping people, supporting people, helping causes all over the planet, and that is an essential part of Liferay. And every time I come in, I know I'm a part of that.
What I love about working at Liferay is probably the people that I work with and the passion they have for what they do. That's all I have. Done.
That's how you do it, people.
So it's been an amazing 10 years, and we think a lot at Liferay about how to stay ahead of technology and relevant to the business so that we can keep doing this for a really long time. And one of the things that we've been thinking a lot about is what's next after Portal. Portal technology is going to seems old-fashioned now. You know, there's so much going on in the world outside of even just the web browser. So how is Liferay going to respond to that? And I want to talk next about where we see both Liferay and the wider business industries going in the next 10 years. And I'm using the term digital business transformation. I know I just lost a lot of credibility with the technical guys because this is totally a buzzword. But ignore the buzzword for now and just think about what it actually means. Internet, mobile, cloud technologies, changing the way we think about business and how to do it. That's really what's going on here. And I want to share some ideas and a vision for that in the next 10 minutes. Okay, so when I say the words digital business, you might think about very, very advanced technologies like the Tesla electric car. If you've seen one in person, it's pretty cool. It's got this huge panel in the front. It's like a giant iPad, and that's how you control the temperature and play your music and all that. And it's not hard to imagine this car, you know, being totally internet-enabled and very, very advanced technology, right? Or sometimes we think about things like wearables. Apple announced their Apple Watch this year. You know, Motorola has had one for a long time. People are talking about having wearable clothing. And this is actually something that's real. These researchers in the Netherlands created this suit because they were working and living in Beijing, which you may know has a big problem with pollution. And so being very technically minded, they said, there's something we can do about this. Let's create a suit that detects the air pollution levels and then turns on an air filtration system when it gets really bad, right? So that's all fine and nice, but today we're in this room and these kinds of technologies, while they seem nice and kind of cool to think about, maybe it doesn't seem so relevant to you and to me, right? So I wanted to give you a much more practical example of how digital business transformation is going to change all of our lives. Now, I'm sure that all of you in this room have been in a situation like this. This is always a problem, right? And I'm going to give a theory that the reason this problem exists is not because of anything else except a flawed business process. And what do I mean by that? The way that gets refilled is by a simple process, which is every hour someone goes in and they check that everything is okay, it's all clean, and your toilet paper is all filled up, right? And there are many processes like this in our daily lives that we don't even think about, and the businesses don't even think about because we've been doing it for so long that it just seems like second nature, right? And so sometimes IT people or developers will come and say, hey, let's digitize this process, right? So what do? Well, you leave the process alone, and then you just kind of put some technology over it, right? So you say, well, let's use iPads, and now this is going to make us so much more efficient because now we don't have to scan the papers, right? But that's not really what we're trying to envision today. We're really trying to see how does digital technology change the way we can actually fulfill this process. So imagine with me for some time that maybe this dispenser is digitally enabled. And so now instead of letting this situation happen, when you have still 1 or 2 centimeters left, there's a weight sensor and there's an internet connection, and so you're able to signal to the maintenance guy, maybe on his mobile phone, that, hey, you need to check out the bathroom over there because there's not much left, right? So this is the sort of thing that I'm talking about. If you do it this way, you can no longer rely on this sort of thing because instead of checking every hour, he might have to check a couple of times, right? For the next hour while we're in this room, sitting and talking about Liferay, no one's really going to be using the toilets, but during the break, all of a sudden, there's 50 people going over there, right? And so the frequency changes. But if you change this process, then you can't assume anymore that this is something he only does every hour. And so that then changes and affects other things that he's doing with the rest of the time, right? Okay, let's look at another example. So education. When I was growing up in the U.S., I remember that a lot of times our schools would give away books, textbooks. And of course, I never wanted it because it's a textbook. You know, I already have to have so many, why would I take more? But what I didn't realize back then, as a young boy, was that the reason they did that was because the business model of the textbook publisher was to create new editions of textbooks, right? So, you know, let's just say that the Northern League of Italy finally got their way and they split off from the rest of the country. And so in the 7th edition of the textbook, they have to change the map and say now it's Italy and Northern Italy. It's a separate country, right? And the textbook publisher is really happy because they can sell more books to you. And so when you look at how people have tried to digitalize this business model today, they've simply taken the same books and put them on things like Kindles and said, you have to pay every time you want to access the book, right? But what if instead of relying on selling the license to the information in the textbook, they actually sold services that made the learning experience richer and fuller? So if this boy, for example, is reading this digital textbook and the book can detect and follow the movement of his eyes across the page, they may notice that he is having some trouble with the concept of fractions. And so let's open the book and look inside and see why. Well, there's an example here about music practice, violin practice. And maybe this boy who's reading this book, for whatever reason, he actually really hates his violin teacher. It's a traumatic experience. Every time he has to go, he cries. And so he's not actually thinking about fractions right now. He's thinking about how much he hates his violin teacher, right? But this digital book has realized from learning how he learns that he hates music. And so before he even sees this example, they're going to personalize the experience for him and actually give him something that he can relate to in a much more positive way. And so then, if you're the textbook publisher, instead of charging for the actual book, what you can charge for is a subscription to an analytics service that follows the progress of the student through every year of his education, compares him with all of his peers, compares him with the national averages, and personalizes the experience so that he can learn as best as he can. Let's take one more example from the automotive industry. So some of the ways in which an internet-enabled car could be helpful are very obvious. The car could signal back to the owner that there are maintenance issues to be solved. But let's go one step further. So imagine that this car, which has a built-in navigation system that is adaptive, has been studying the driving patterns of this vehicle owner. And what it has realized is that over time, it has a very predictable routine. So the driver goes to work over here, they live here in this neighborhood called Las Tablas, and then every day they're going back and forth from work, right? So this navigation system, the car, has been learning about this owner, and now it knows that there are these maintenance issues. And it's going to do a lookup to the service center database, which may be in a portal or whatever else. And it's going to notice that there were some last-minute appointment cancellations at the local dealer that is just right between the home and the workplace for this driver. And so now it's seeing that the service center has an open appointment and this driver has these things they have to fix. So let's bring them together and solve both problems. And so the next time the guy gets in the car actually makes him an offer and says, hey, if you're willing to spend 30 more minutes on the way home at the service center, we will actually fix your problems and we'll give you a discount. Right? So these are the kinds of things that we're starting to envision being possible with digital and internet technology, and Liferay wants to be a big part of that. I want to dig a little bit deeper into one area, which is marketing, and show you how digital technology has changed the way we do marketing, so that we can then finally look at what all of this means for the Liferay platform. So if you were here last year at the symposium, you may remember a guy named Rubinacci that I told you about. He's an expert tailor based here in Italy, and he's been doing this business for his whole life, right? And I used him as an example of how the nature of business has changed. Actually, it's very, very unnatural for me to be standing up here in front of you and just talking and shouting at you rather than us having a one-to-one conversation, right? But this is made possible by technology like this microphone and the projector and this computer. Well, that's actually, as it turns out, nothing new because technology has always enabled us for the last 100 years to have farther and farther reach in terms of the business relationships that we have, right? But part of the problem with mass media technology is that it becomes more and more impersonal. And so instead of having a relationship with a guy like Rubinacci, now we actually have a mass media relationship or a marketing relationship with the companies that provide our products and services. And we're no longer talking with each other, but it's more like companies are shouting at you. If you go out to, Via Corso, there's like H&M and there's, Gap and so many companies that are saying, you need to buy our stuff. It's impossible to ignore it, right? There's marketing and there's messaging everywhere. And behind the scenes, there's even more stuff going on because they have tailored those messages according to who you are, what your gender is, how much money you make, how old you are, and all these things, right? And again, these are all very unnatural things that have been made possible through mass media. But internet technology, digital technology, is actually very, very different. It's different because even today, in your pocket, you have the power to not only hear what I have to say to you, you can get on Twitter, find my Twitter account, and say, hey, this thing you're saying about digital technology doesn't make any sense, right? So now, actually, the people, our customers, our partners, our employees, have the voice and the channels to speak back to us and say, this is what I really think, right? And so we have to rethink a lot of what we do. And one of the biggest things that has been transformed in the last 5 years is websites, right? So we used to think of websites as another mass media channel. It's just another way to shout messages at people. And the reason for this, I think, is because it came from a heritage of things like news and television and radio, right? In the past, when radio and television was the way that we communicated with people, there was less content and more attention. In other words, if you came home at the end of the day and you wanted to watch something on TV, you had like 3 or 4 channels maybe, right? And you choose from one of those channels and then you watch whatever's on. Maybe it wasn't your favorite show, but you didn't have a lot of choices. But today, we have so many choices, not just on the television with like 100 cable channels, but also we can get on the internet, we can get on our phones, we have so many ways to consume information, and yet we have no attention. I myself, I have a very hard time even sitting through a talk like this without checking my phone a couple of times, right? So we've gone from this kind of a reality to this, where it used to be one screen for a lot of people, now it's a lot of screens for a single person. So in this environment, how should you build your website? Well, unfortunately, a lot of us still think of a website like this, which is, here's this random place on the internet, and I think people are going to randomly pass by. And so I want to make sure that whatever is there is kind of interesting for a lot of different people, right? And that's basically a physical storefront, like here in the center of Rome. And so a lot of times we fight with like training or sales or marketing, who all want to have control of that storefront and say, this is what I think should be on there. But actually, there's no need to do that because the internet is not like a storefront. It's actually like a big warehouse. We don't kind of casually browse the internet. We actually go into a search box and we look for exactly what we want, right? And so instead of treating it like a single storefront, your website can actually be like this. That storefront can change for me, for Marco, for Alexander, for Joe, for Olaf. Each person can have their own personal storefront. And this is now possible with digital technologies we have. So, let me give you a concrete example. At Liferay, we've been doing the same thing. We've been going through these same processes. And if you go to our website today, this is what it looks like. You've probably been there. But if you are a frequent visitor to Liferay, if you're part of the community, if you have filled out some of our forms and downloaded our papers, you're going to see something very different, which is this banner. This banner is advertising our events. And this actually resulted from a real conversation we had with our events team, who wanted to put these kinds of banners on the front page for everyone. And we said, well, you know, that makes sense for people who know Liferay and who have been with us for a long time. But if it's your first time to Liferay.com, you don't care about, you know, Symposium. You're probably not going to come because you have to pay money and you have to spend a whole day here. So, so why don't we just show it for people who have visited Liferay.com anytime before? So it was a great compromise in terms of the business units, but it also makes a lot more sense for our visitors. So new visitors see our core messaging and our value proposition. Returning visitors get offered events. We also have lots of little sites. We have microsites for different marketing campaigns that we're doing. We have sites for all the events that we do. And of course, if you're a customer of Liferay or a partner, you're going to see our customer portal or our partner portal, right? So now we're starting to evolve away from the single website for everyone to having lots of little experiences for every different group of people that have different interests. Okay, I'm going to take a little water break. And now, let's talk about Liferay. So, if this is the reality we're living in the 21st century, what does that mean for our technology? Over the last 10 years, Liferay and other portals have been trying to solve this problem. You have a lot of back-end systems that need to be accessed by different people, and you want to securely present access to that through a web browser, right? And so our response to that problem was do a lot of integration in the back end, and then create websites and intranets and things that give you access to those systems in the front end. But we never thought about a few different things. One is the concern here was more about how can we make sure that these systems are safe, right? The other thing is we never thought about, well, some people actually access more than one of these, and yet we have no insight into what they're doing across all of the systems. We just see one website or one intranet, right? There are more problems, actually. Another problem is that we kind of assumed that we would always be in a web browser, right? But today, mobile is ubiquitous. We all have different apps. Hopefully you have the Liferay Events app on your mobile phone right now. And you're going to be doing stuff like looking at the agenda. You're going to be rating the sessions. You might have the forums reader to access Liferay.com, right? And again, this is entering into buzzword territory, but the Internet of Things. Some of you may have started to see wearables and internet refrigerators and things like that in your lives, right? So as these interfaces proliferate, it's no longer enough to think about your portal just as being through a single web browser, right? And finally, on top of all that, we've become much more sophisticated about how we personalize and contextualize our information and experiences. So now it's not just about I'm a customer or I'm a partner, but different countries, different interests, and ultimately different stages in your journey with the company are going to affect what you want to see and what you need. And so we need a platform that can bring all of this together and multiply the different places and ways in which you can interact with the company. So how do we want to see Liferay evolving in the future? we have a very, very strong foundation, which is you can integrate many backend systems and use all of our out-of-the-box functionality to build really great websites, intranets, and portals. We've been doing a lot of work on our APIs and our services so that now you can access all of this functionality from many more places. We've always had a lot of great portlets and things out of the box so you can quickly build these websites and intranets. But now we're moving much farther than that. We're moving into mobile. So you may have seen some of the work that we've been doing with the mobile SDK. This is really admitting that no longer can we just build websites, but we also have to do mobile apps and mobile websites. And then we've also started to embrace JavaScript frameworks. You may have heard of Ember or Angular or Backbone, things like that. We're looking at how we can actually make it so that Liferay can be a back-end service provider to JavaScript front ends like built-in things like Backbone. Okay, and then we want to bring that all together by saying, even if people are interacting mainly in these other ways, there's ways for Liferay to have insight into those people and connect the dots across their relationship. Okay. So just very quickly, I want to show you some of the things that we've been working on to fulfill this vision. One of the things is the thing we were calling single-page applications. Eduardo Lundgren, who's part of our Brazil team, has been working on this. And for the technical people, basically, it's a way to make Liferay function much more like a modern application. If you're familiar with, if you use Google Mail or Facebook, you'll notice that it's much more snappy, it's much more responsive than Liferay is. And so we want to bring some of those benefits into Liferay applications. Here's a video that just compares the two approaches. If you're not using a single page application functionality, in the Liferay jukebox application, you're clicking on this image and just look at how long it takes to reload the page. It took a full, I think, 20 seconds if you notice that that image in the corner is still loading. So about 22 seconds for the page to refresh. With this single page application, on a simulated ISDN connection, it's almost not worth showing because it's so quick. 2 seconds for that image to load. So even if you're just using Liferay in the traditional way with portal-based websites, that kind of stuff is going to make Liferay much more modern, much more responsive. We're also working on this thing called Screens for mobile apps. Screens is basically taking the mobile SDK and in something like the iOS software development kit, we are pre-building interfaces for things like login, for showing content, for showing a dynamic form, so that as the mobile app developer, all you have to do is instantiate that screen and connect it in the workflow of your application. So here's an example of that going on. Basically, someone is creating a new iOS app right now, and he's able to just create this screen and say, okay, now it's going to be a login widget, and you'll see that. So once he chooses login widget as a class, now it actually is automatically wired into a Liferay sign-in, right? So if you've been creating a lot of mobile apps in your company, probably you've realized that every time you create a mobile app, you're reinventing some of the same features, right? And what does a portal do? It lets you centralize and reuse application functionality, including things like authentication and user profiles. And so we realized that, as mobile apps proliferate, all of the benefits of Portal apply equally well to the mobile applications. Let me show you one more example. We did this one because we actually heard from a lot of our customers that this is a problem that they have. Their mobile app developers were trying to figure out how to do localization translating content into many different languages, because in today's world, you have to have your apps working in English, Spanish, French, Italian, and everything else. And so we realized, well, localization is a problem we solved like 7 years ago in Liferay. So how can we actually make that functionality, how can we make it available from Liferay into the mobile apps? And so they're demonstrating the web content management system of Liferay. You're editing and localizing the web content article in Liferay, and then you're able to show that in mobile app. So now we have a Spanish language version of this article, and now we go back to the mobile app. And you'll notice that he was able to actually customize that sign-in screen. So you're going to be able to provide your own look and feel for the Liferay screens. So he's checking that we're in Spanish in the phone. He's going to sign in. Okay, so this is just the beginning. One of the most powerful things I've seen with Liferay screens is a dynamic form. If you've done mobile app development, you may have been frustrated by the fact that every time you make a change, you have to resubmit the app to Apple. They have to reapprove it in order to get it into the Apple App Store. With Liferay, now you're going to be able to dynamically update what goes in the app. So you might have a survey saying, I'd like to know what you thought about our products, and you only have 2 products at the time, and people are submitting the form. And then next year, you introduce 2 more products. So instead of having to update the entire app and then resubmit it, you can just update the choices, which are being served from a Liferay server, so that now people can choose from all 4 of your products instead of just the 2. So we're developing this right now. It's available in beta for iOS. We're developing it on Android as well. I hope it's very useful and powerful for you guys. And then finally, what you'll hear about next is audience targeting. This is a module that we've just developed this year, and it really puts into concrete practice a lot of what I've been talking about in terms of digital marketing and personalizing the experience for different groups of people. So that's what you're going to see next. Okay, so just to close, I hope a lot of this is exciting for you, but for some of you, you might think that this is too far in the future. Digital transformation is not really what we're worried about. We're just trying to get our internet or our website working. We're still using Liferay for those basic things. And that's okay, because before you can do any of that kind of stuff, you're going to need to do a lot of the integration. You're going to need to do a lot of the user experience analysis that is required by those things before you take the next step into this digital future. So you're on the right track. You're on the right journey with us. We're going to try to figure out these things before it hits you, so that when it finally comes time for you to do your digital business transformation, we hope to have some of the lessons learned already. So without any more delays, I'd like to ask Ricardo to come up for audience targeting. Thanks a lot.